So, last time we were reading episode 4 of Fated Mates of the Drakoan. And at the end of that episode, she is about to set out on a journey to not only find some food for her friends and roommates, but also to figure out what's really going on out there. So, let's see what she finds. Hello, my name is Danielle Forrest, and on this channel I do videos about myself, my writing, and anything related to those topics. Today is going to be episode 5 of Fated Mates of the Drakoan, titled Invaded. Jess pushed open the front door, and suddenly her feet froze in place, her entire body hesitant to take another step. The view was eerily quiet. There was no movement, and the only sound was the voices of her friends. In the garden out back, they were arguing about a lack of tools. Maybe I'll check in with a hardware store on the way, she thought to herself. A hardware store might not be thoroughly picked over yet, and if they were lucky, maybe they'd have lots of seeds too, just in case. Jess shifted her grip on her bow and grabbed a single arrow from the quiver on her hip. The flimsy container wobbled back and forth awkwardly, but she tried to ignore it, notching the arrow in case she saw something worth hunting. She'd never hunted before, but it couldn't be that hard. Just good aim and timing, right? And she wasn't completely ignorant. She knew, for example, that when shooting a deer, you always went for the quick kill. Not only was it more merciful, but it also prevented the animal from running and dying miles away from you, unretrievable. As she started to wander the neighborhood, she became slightly disoriented and forced herself to focus, pushing back the many invasive thoughts that had consumed her since the power went out. Not having turn-by-turn directions for the first time, and God only knew how long, was a major contributing factor in her disorientation. And as she took in her surroundings, she realized even the experience of walking was messing with her. The sensory landscape was so different from when she was driving. It meant familiar landscapes felt almost surreal. A couple times on her walk, she saw squirrels or rabbits, but none of them stuck around long enough for her to raise her bow, let alone shoot it. It's not much meat anyway. It wasn't much of a consolation. A few animals that size would probably be enough meat for a day, and that was still better than using up their stores. Anything was better than nothing, especially when they didn't know when their situation would change. She scoffed, shaking her head at her thoughts. She couldn't even say go back to normal in her own head. It felt like an idea so far-fetched at this point it wasn't even worth thinking about. Time passed slowly as she navigated the Maryland suburbs, and by the time she crossed the bridge over the Anacostia River, she'd been gone for several hours. Again, it was weird walking it. She'd always crossed the river by car or bus, never on foot. At one point, she looked over the side, staring down at the running water. It was surprisingly blue. She wasn't expecting it to be so blue. She remembered reading tons of articles about the pollution in the river, seen plenty of photos of it looking murky and brown. Maybe it's having a good day. She laughed. It was such a ridiculous thing to think, and as she continued crossing the bridge, a smile now stretched her face as she shook her head. She stopped when she reached the other side, staring off to her right at the small wooded area around the Anacostia Riverwalk Trail. It was the last bit of green she would likely see for a while, everything ahead of her being city streets and buildings until she reached the U.S. Capitol. She squinted down at the trees, wondering if she would have a better chance at finding game there. But with the way the roads were designed, she might have an easier time getting to those woods on the way back. Jess turned, looking out over the streets and buildings in the distance. She remembered seeing images in college, even those taken only a few decades ago, that had shown vivid green spaces and trees in the distance. No more. Once she focused on the city proper, it was all pavement and tall buildings. Standing there on the ground rather than driving by in a car, the difference was even more staggering. There used to be historical buildings and quaint architectures, but now there were mostly tall skyscrapers meant to overcome the multiple housing crises the area had experienced over the years. She started walking down the street again, giving up on her quest for supplies for the moment in favor of answers. Right now, she suspected answers would serve them better. Anyway, they still had food, after all. They could survive a bit longer without supplementation. But information? Not having the right information could mean life or death, wouldn't it? As she'd told Scotty, they were in uncharted territory. You didn't survive uncharted territory by stumbling around blindly. You did so by collecting as much information as you could. You charted that territory. With that foremost in her mind, she continued down the street with more confidence in her step, her arms swaying back and forth as she hummed quietly to herself. As she walked, she found her troubles falling away, and she started to enjoy the experience. It was honestly a beautiful day. Sun shining, blue skies, not too hot, and just a light breeze ruffling her hair and clothing. It was another half hour before she spotted the Capitol, its distinctive shape standing out just as much as the sudden shock of green surrounding it. But as she approached, slipping between the manicured trees, she paused, realizing she probably wouldn't find answers here as the scene settled into her brain. Where are the cars? From here, she could see the green lawn stretching out in front of her, with pathways looping it on either side, and the U.S. Capitol up ahead. Between the lawn and the building, there should have been a small parking area with cars looping the lawn. She'd once picked Tom up from work here when his car had broken down, so she remembered what it looked like. Except there was nothing. No cars. No people. Shouldn't there be something? Maybe they're inside. Maybe they had to walk here when the power died. It was a possibility, but one she was losing faith in as the anxiety started to churn in her gut once more, darkening the previously sunny day in her eyes. She thought about turning back, about not even trying to find anyone. But there could be people inside, and she'd been away for hours. It wouldn't take long to go inside and be sure. Plus, she was already here. It would be kind of a waste not to at least check it out, right? Jess started to step out from the line of trees when suddenly she heard voices. Her first reaction was excitement. Yes! There's someone here! She turned to the noise, her body wanting to run to it in excitement after the letdown of the empty parking lot, but she held herself back. You don't know who they are. They might not be safe. So instead, she pressed up harder against the tree, its bark digging into her exposed skin. Their words drifted into her ears, and she frowned when she didn't recognize them. Jess closed her eyes, focusing on what they were saying, but still, it didn't sound familiar, and she definitely knew her way around languages. She wasn't a linguist or anything, but she knew English and Mandarin, and was starting to learn Spanish from living with Inez for a while. She recognized Romance languages and Asian languages, though she often couldn't differentiate them. Same with Germanic languages. She also knew a few words of Usin, though she'd never bothered to learn more than a few greetings, like, "Hi, how are you, and do you speak English?" This was no language she'd ever heard before, and red flags started sounding off in her head. She pressed harder against the tree as she craned her neck around, trying to figure out where the voices were coming from. Why are they here? She racked her brain, but couldn't think of a single valid reason someone with good intentions would be speaking a language other than English around the capital in a time of crisis. Then she saw them. At first, she didn't quite know what she was seeing. They looked like any other group of soldiers from this distance. They were wearing uniforms and carrying weapons, and she wondered if maybe the Pentagon had sent a team to check on the Capitol after the power had gone out. That would make sense, right? But then, why aren't they speaking English? And that was when she noticed their tails. It was the movement that caught her eye, a hypnotic swaying motion that gently shifted back and forth, feeling at odds with the confident, swift way they crossed the lawn. But that wasn't the only thing that set them apart. Shortly after the swaying motion of their tails caught her gaze, her brain picked up on their skin. She couldn't see a lot of detail, but she could could pick up the color well enough against their dark uniforms in the bright sunlight. It was red. They had red skin. Oh shit! They invaded. She spun around, holding her hand against her mouth, afraid to so much as breathe. Her entire body was shaking with fear, and tears welled on her eyelids, threatening to spill over. She was clutching her bow tight against her chest, afraid her shaking hands would have it banging against the tree behind her and give her away. Even though through the fog of fear, a small voice in her head was saying, "See? This is why there's been radio silence." She didn't really want to hear it. She didn't even want to think about it, but the voice was unassailable. Her lungs were starting to burn from not getting enough oxygen as she heard the aliens behind her continuing on their journey. Then when their voices grew fainter and fainter, she finally relaxed against the tree, letting her hand drop, her entire body sagging in exhaustion. Oh God, that was close. But then, not even a moment later, two more voices, also completely foreign, spoke up from almost right behind her. Oh shit, I'm dead. She held her breath, hoping they hadn't heard her when she'd let her guard down. Had she made any noises? Were they even paying attention? Her muscles hurt, and a sick feeling started to suffuse her entire body as they slowly followed the others, eventually growing quiet as well. She was relieved, but also afraid to relax, and slowly peeked out from behind the tree. From here, she could see the group, 6 in total, moving toward the Capitol building, 2 lagging behind the others. None of them seemed close enough to hear her, and none of them were looking in her direction. "Oh God," she said, as she turned and dropped her head against the rough bark of the tree that had been her sanctuary. That was close. Tired but resigned, she pushed off the tree and looked back at the aliens, ready to go home. Fuck! This is not the information I was looking for, she said to herself. She turned, looking back the way she'd come, back toward home. What am I going to tell everyone? All right. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Fated Mates of the Drakoan. What do you think is going to happen next? Are they going to find out that she's there? What is she going to do? What is she going to tell her friends? What should she tell her friends? What would you tell your friends if you found aliens had invaded Earth? Anyway, if you enjoyed this, consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell if you want notifications. You can find links for various ways to get in contact with me and to connect with my content in the description of the video. So if that's something you want, check it out. If you want to read ahead in Fated Mates of the Drakoan, you can do so on my Ream subscription, link in the description. For followers on Ream, which is free, by the way, you can get 1 chapter ahead, 1 episode ahead, technically, and you can get 5 episodes ahead by joining my $5 Serial Lover tier. So, if that's something that you're interested in, check it out. Links in the description. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. There will be cards on the screen that you can check out to look at more of my videos. And until next time, later. Bye.